What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back, and as always, thank you for joining me. My name's Paul Brettel. Packers versus Dolphins, Thanksgiving night, Lambeau Field. Today we're here to discuss specifically the defensive side of the ball, Lukas Van Ness, his performance on Sunday, what it means for him, this pass rush going forward, and then the Green Bay Packers linebacker position against a speedy, a dynamic Miami Dolphins offense. But first, you know the drill. Hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. And you can find all my work over at ESPNLacrosse.com. And for my Wisconsin sports fans out there, Packers, Brewers, Bucks, Badgers radio, download the 1055 ESPN Lacrosse app. Find me on Sports Lead Monday through Friday from 3 to 6. So, like I said, focus today, defensive side of the ball. Let's kick things off with Lukas Van Ness, who had easily his most disruptive performance of the game on Sunday against the 49ers, which included a forced fumble. And obviously the hope moving forward for him is that confidence he gained, that performance in general, can be the catalyst for a more steady pass rush presence from him over what's left of the season. So that fumble, let's focus on that, because outside of just that big play, there was a lot that went into it beforehand that I think is a really, really good sign of some development, some growth that's taking place with him. So at this stage of the game, Packers are up 24-10. 49ers have the ball at their own 15-yard line. It's 1st and 5. Van Ness power rushes through as he does, bowls through his offensive lineman, throws Christian McCaffrey to the side. Brandon Allen, the 49ers quarterback, steps up in the pocket to try to avoid the rush, but Van Ness gets him from behind, forces the fumble, and it's recovered by Kenny Clark. Offense takes over. 3 plays later, they find the end zone. It's 31-10. So that forced fumble by Van Ness really, it put the game away for the Green Bay Packers. They're already in good control, but once that fumble happened in the red zone, they start with the ball, obviously find the end zone, basically put that game away for Green Bay. So let's start with that fumble, which again, on its own, a very encouraging play from Van Ness, who's had a very, very quiet season up to this point on Sunday. But like I said, I loved everything that went into that play. So we're in the locker room afterwards, and Rashawn Gary was asked about the fumble, and he gave us a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. There was a few series prior to that one where Van Ness had noticed how the 49ers were blocking when they utilized play action. So they're on the sidelines. Van Ness is telling Rebovich, the defensive line coach, telling the other defensive lineman, hey, if we get this look again in play action, here's how they're blocking, here's how we should attack it. So for Van Ness, that diagnosing of what's happening in real time, drawing up a plan of attack, saying, hey, all right, if we get this look again, here's how we need to rush the offensive line, here's how we need to rush the quarterback, and then going out there and executing on it. I think that is just one, love the peek behind the curtain that Gary gave us, but 2, I think that's just a really, really good sign of the growth, the development that he's having. Again, diagnosing it, formulating a plan, and then when it happens in real time, being able to go and execute it at a high level to come up with a big play in the game, forcing a turnover, and again, which helped the Packers put the game away at that point. And up until then, again, not a lot of production from Van Ness. He had, in Sunday's game, he had 2 pressures and a sack and a forced fumble. The previous 10 games prior, he had 7 total pressures. Pro Football Focus has a pass rush win rate metric, basically a ratio. How often are you beating the guy across from you? And Van Ness came into this past Sunday's game ranked, 79th out of 122 eligible defensive ends. So again, the consistency hasn't been there. The overall production hasn't been there from him. So from a growth, a development standpoint, that is in question, right? You wonder what kind of strides he's making, because on Sundays you're not seeing the results, right? You're not seeing the effect of everything that's going into what he wants to produce on Sundays. Again, that doesn't mean that all this stuff isn't happening behind the scenes. Of course it is, but ultimately it's a results-based business. And when it came to Van Ness, you were wondering where that production was, because the knock on him, coming out of Iowa, was one, very, very raw player, had fewer than 1,000 career snaps during his time at Iowa. And the big thing for him, and we've been looking for it this season, is what's the pass rush plan? right? Because you come to the NFL, you can't just run around everyone with your speed. You can't just run through everyone with your power. I mean, these offensive tackles, obviously goes without saying, really, really good. So as a pass rusher, you have to have a counter to their counter, right? Because if your initial plan is to go at them with speed and they lock you up, well, how are you going to respond to that? Because if you don't have anything to counter with or to try to catch them off balance with, you're just going to be taken out of the play. And I think, we talk about the lack of production with Van Ness. I think a lot of that comes from trying to cultivate that pass rush plan, having that deep repertoire of moves that you can rely on. So again, when your bread and butter is taken away from you, which is going to happen, it's the NFL, how are you responding? So for me, coming into Sunday's game, just given how this season's unfolded, that was one of the big question marks that I had around Van Ness. And again, seeing him identify in real time, come up with the plan of attack, and then going out there and executing it, I think is a really important step again in his growth and his development. And Jeff Hafley talked about it on Tuesday. Just hopefully that play, and again, everything that went into it, because again, play's great, we got to have it, got to produce, but the process to get there, to me, is hands down far and away the most important aspect of that play. So Hafley said on Tuesday, hopefully going through that process, being able to come through with that big play, gives him some confidence going forward, which potentially, again, season hasn't played out as he was hoping for, may have been wavering. So hopefully that gives his confidence a boost. Hopefully that play, everything that went into it, can be a catalyst for him going forward. And we've talked about it on here before. For this defense as a whole, this Packers defense as a whole, to reach its ceiling, the pass rush has to be much more consistent in the second half of the season. That's not just Lukas Van Ness. That is everybody along that defensive front. And that entire group has to improve. Now, there's varying degrees within that group of what you need from each of those players, but everybody has to take a step forward. And I do think collectively, especially in recent weeks, we're seeing more strides from this group. I think Brenton Cox has provided an infusion, some pass rush juice. Rashawn Gary is picking up steam in recent weeks. So I think they're headed in the right direction as a collective unit. But again, how good that group is, to me, is going to dictate how good this defense is as a whole. As we all know, you get off the ball, getting after the quarterback's the name of the game, right? You generate pressure, you disrupt the timing, the rhythm of the play. That can throw everything off. Can lead to mistakes, can lead to turnovers, interceptions. We know all of that. Pressure is good, pressure is important. In the run game component, the best way to wreck any sort of running play or just play in general is with that quick push up the middle. If you're able to slow an offense's run game, well, now they're behind the sticks. Second and long, third and long, your pass rush can pin its ears back. You as a defense have an advantage when the offense is in these predictable passing situations. When the pass rush, when the defensive front is playing at a high level, there isn't a position group, there isn't a player on that defensive side of the ball that doesn't benefit from it. So that's why I say if this defense is going to reach its ceiling, it's going to be determined, that ceiling is going to be determined by what that pass rush does and how good that unit is. So great play from Lukas Van Ness. I've said it enough already, but I love everything that went into it. And hopefully for him, that can be a catalyst moving forward, because even from a snap count, yes, he was actually I believe the fourth member of the defensive end rotation in terms of snaps. He was out-snapped by Gary, obviously, Enagbari, and Brenton Cox this past game, but he's going to be a key part of that four-man rotation going forward the remainder of the season. So you need him to build upon that performance on Sunday and let that be closer to the norm rather than being an outlier. Because up to this point in the season, that level of play from him, that's been the outlier. So again, build upon it, use that confidence, and have that propel you going forward. So again, what we saw against the 49ers becomes more the norm for Van Ness, and that's going to benefit the front, and then that's going to benefit the entire defense. All right, friends, let's jump to the linebacker position, a group that the Packers are currently dealing with injuries at, and a position that we know the Miami Dolphins offense can really stress. They are really good at putting the linebackers of opposing defenses in a bind. So what we know right now, Edgerrin Cooper has already been ruled out of Thursday's game, which I don't think is going to come as a surprise to anyone at this point. He suffered a hamstring injury last Wednesday as the Packers were preparing for the 49ers game. And as we all know, that's an injury that can certainly linger, oftentimes one that needs more than a week of rest and rehab for a player to come back. So he's already been ruled out. Again, don't think that's going to catch anyone off guard. What was a bit of a surprise at the start of the week, anyways, on that first Packers injury report. And again, they did walkthroughs all week because it's a short week. Every injury report that came out was an estimation of, all right, if we had a full-on practice, what would this player's practice status have been? But we saw Isaiah McDuffie pop up on the Packers injury report with an ankle injury, assuming obviously he suffered that during the game on Sunday against the 49ers. But he was a non-participant the first 2 days, was upgraded to a limited participant the third day here on Wednesday, and is listed as questionable. So certainly still going to have our doubts about whether he's available or not. And a big tell about whether he's going to be out there is leading up to Thursday's game when the Packers, if they make any sort of practice squad elevations, if they bring up one of their linebackers just to bolster their depth, I think that could give us a tell, again, whether or not Isaiah McDuffie is going to be out there. But as Matt LaFleur said on Tuesday, are we concerned about the linebacker depth? He kept it, short and to the point. Absolutely. And understandably so. If you're already without Cooper, you're potentially going to be without Isaiah McDuffie. So who are the Packers going to rely on? Well, one, let's start when they're in their nickel formation, which week in and week out, that's what you see all NFL defenses lined up in the most in today's league. So it's two linebackers on the field. We're going to see Quay Walker. We're going to see Eric Wilson handling those responsibilities. Not a surprise, not a shock. That's what we expect right there. Eric Wilson, when given the opportunity this season, has done a really good job of making some splash plays. And Quay Walker, he's coming off, Jeff Hafley said it, I think a lot of us saw it with our eyes watching the game unfold, but he's coming off of what Jeff Hafley called his best game on Sunday. And in order to have that performance, Hafley said it started with the week leading up to it. Admittedly, the Chicago game for Quay, not the performance that he wanted to put out there on tape. I think, again, we all saw that. But where Hafley was really, really impressed with him was how he responded, how he attacked the week. Hafley said that Quay looked like a man on a mission going into that 49ers game, wanting to rebound, wanting to get back on the right track, and all of that work throughout the week, that preparation led to the performance that we saw on Sunday. Again, playing downhill, fighting through blocks, couple tackles for loss, positioned well in coverage, should have had an interception, was setting edges in the run game. I mean, that's the Quay Walker I think we all envisioned over these last few years, and we've seen it, again, sporadically here and there. So similarly to what we talked about with Van Ness earlier, it's about building upon that performance for Quay. So what we saw on Sunday against the 49ers, again, is closer to the norm and what we expect from him rather than the outlier performance, which it has tended to be. So again, Quay Walker, Eric Wilson, Packers nickel linebackers. When they go into their 4-3 base, when they have three linebackers on the field, presumably it's going to be rookie Tyron Hopper who's going to be joining Walker and Wilson out there. Hopper's been a core special teams player this season. I believe he ranks top 5 on the team in special team snaps this season. Saw his first defensive snaps this past Sunday against the 49ers, played 7, most of which came at the end of the game when it was put away and the Packers took their starters off the field. But a few of the characteristics of Hopper's game that Brian Gutekunst talked about after the draft was his stopping power, just willingness to take on blockers, to fight through them, his physicality, and then they really like his speed. During the pre-draft process, the Packers, I believe they had Hopper in for a top 30 visit, and just when they were working him out, had him clocked in the 4.5s for a 40 time, which is really good speed for the linebacker position. So good speed, physical player, and as this season has gone on, again, he's an incoming rookie, like just about any rookie out there. He's navigating the learning curve, right, that comes with making the jump from college to the NFL level, understanding the playbook, getting adjusted to the play speed, what his responsibilities are within Jeff Hafley's defensive scheme. And Hafley talked about it on Tuesday. They're seeing good progress from him. LaFleur echoed these sentiments as well. They're seeing good progress from him on the practice field. And kind of two words that Hafley used to describe is he's getting more comfortable with what he's being asked to do and getting more confident. Now, again, Doing that on the practice field is obviously a great start. Going out and executing it on Sundays when haven't really had any reps in those live games in that capacity on the defensive side of the ball. Two very different things, but it does sound like Hopper has been on the right path, on the right developmental path, and making those strides, those steps that the Packers do want to see from him. Now, let's take a look at the Miami Dolphins, who, as I said at the start of this, do a really, really good job of stressing opponents defensively, and specifically the linebacker position. It starts with all of the motion, all of the misdirection, the eye candy pre-snap that they utilize. Motions, again, misdirections. They will throw a lot of fluff at you, again, just trying to get defenders looking one way, and then the play is actually unfolding in a different, going a different direction. Because at the NFL level, I mean, it only takes a half a second of hesitation as you're deciphering which way to go, or maybe half a step in the wrong direction for a running lane to open, for a passing window to open. And against this Miami offense, where you just have so much speed, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devin Achane at the running back position, I mean, that is all it takes for this offense to rip off a huge run or a huge play in the passing game. So that misdirection, that motion is a big element of what the Dolphins do. And the linebackers, who are obviously in the middle of the defense where the Dolphins like to attack. I mean, Tua is going after the short middle, the intermediate middle throws very often. And again, that's where the linebackers are positioned. So it's going to come down, and Evan Williams talked about this. Lukas Van Ness mentioned something similar. It's trust in your eyes, right? It's sticking to your fundamentals and sticking to your rules on that given play. What's your responsibility, and not getting too caught up in everything else that's going on around you, right? You have your responsibility on a play. You have to stick to it and trust that if the play's going in a different direction, that the guy next to you and the other 10 defenders on the field are all doing their specific responsibility, again, to maintain the defensive integrity of the play call that Hafley made, right? So it's fundamentals, it's technique, it's sticking to your rules, it's trust in your eyes, not getting too caught up in everything that's taking place. Because again, Dolphins from a pre-snap perspective are going to throw a lot of opposing defense. And again, for an offense that in the passing game over the middle of the field, that's where their bread and butter is. I mean, again, that puts a lot on the shoulders of those linebackers. Because like I said, it's a brief hesitation, half a step in the other direction, and it can be a 60, 70-yard play. Because as explosive as this Dolphins offense is, and they certainly can throw the ball downfield with the speed that they have, a lot of their big plays are generated, again, by getting those playmakers that they have the ball in space. They run, I think they're up there, if not the league leader in screens. Again, utilizing the middle of the field crossers, slants, just getting guys like Tyreek Hill, Waddle to chain the ball in space, and then just letting their yak abilities, their speed, their natural playmaking abilities take over at that point. So how do you combat that, right? I mean, that's the big question at hand for Jeff Hafley. And you obviously, a key part is keeping everything in front of you, but there's a dangerous element to that too, right? If you're worried about, again, the speed that they have and getting beat over the top, well, again, that can open up those underneath throws that we just talked about, where you have some of the best guys who in the NFL at the catch and run, the yak element of it. If you start to try to take that away and you start to creep up, well, it's going to leave you exposed potentially by getting beat over the top. There is no magic wand that you can wave to give you the perfect defense and coverage against this Miami Dolphins team. That's a lot of speed that the Packers are going to have to contend with. And kind of tying our two topics together today, a lot of it is going to start with the defensive front and being able to get after Tua. This season, these numbers are from Pro Football Focus. When he's throwing from a clean pocket, his completion percentage is 75%. When Tua's under pressure this season, his completion rate is just 40%. Now, the struggle here for defense is generating that pressure. In terms of pressure rate, the Dolphins' offensive line has given up the third lowest amount of pressure this season, and a lot of that, or a good a lot helpful to that, I'll say, is Tua in getting the ball out of his hands quickly. I think his average time to throw, according to PFF, is 2.33 seconds, which is the quickest time in football. So that ball is out really quick. And honestly, for any quarterback, if that ball's out in under 2.5 seconds, it's really, really hard for a defensive front to win that quickly, to be able to generate that pressure. So when the Packers have those opportunities to go get after Tua, they got to capitalize on them. Got to take advantage of it. And in order to have those opportunities, again, we're going full circle here, you got to stop the run, right? You got to put the offense in those predictable passing situations, because if they're, if Mostert, if a chain are picking up 5-6 yards per rush, which they've done in recent weeks, it's a tough way to live for a defense. Because now the offense is ahead of the sticks. They have the entire playbook open to them. If you're the defense, you're having to defend both the run and the pass. Are they taking a shot downfield? Are they dumping it off? Are they running it? I mean, if you're a defense and this is an offense that can already put you on their heels, again, the motions, the misdirection, the speed, that in itself is a big enough of a challenge. But now if you have to factor in, well, are they running here? Are they passing here? Just a whole nother element, dimension for that Dolphins offense that you now as a defense have to contend with. So slowing the run, putting them in those predictable passing situations. Tua's going to get the ball out quick, letting your pass rush at least have the opportunity to pin their ears back, get back there as quick as possible to try to drum up some pressure. And then when the ball comes out, the Packers need 11 defenders swarming to the football to limit those yards after the catch opportunities. I know Matt LaFleur's talked about afterwards, showing the team some tape where he'll pause it once the receiver has the ball and count how many of the Packers defenders he can see in the frame. And obviously you want to see all 11 within that frame, because that means everyone's rallying to the football, because that's what the Packers, that's going to be such a big part of Thursday's game and limiting this Dolphins offense that over the last 5 weeks with Tua back at quarterback, they're averaging 29 points a game. This has been a high-powered Miami offense over the last month plus. And again, everything we just talked about, the run game, the misdirection, the motion, the short to intermediate throws, the yak ability, that is a real stressor, all of that on the linebacker position. And it's not unlike this past game against the 49ers, some similar elements to it, again, with Mike McDaniel having spent time under Kyle Shanahan, but a big difference in terms of who the quarterback is and just what that unlocks for the Dolphins offense versus the 49ers and having Brandon Allen instead of Brock Purdy. So Packers, we're already shorthanded at linebacker. They're not going to have Edgerrin Cooper. We'll find out 90 minutes before kickoff whether Isaiah McDuffie's out there or not. But otherwise, when they're in their base 4-3 defense, and I don't know that we're going to see it a ton. Again, this is a lot of playmakers for Miami. I think we're going to see a lot more nickel defense from the Packers. But there's going to be times when they're in that base, and that's going to put Tyron Hopper on the field. And again, very, very challenging offense for a linebacker unit to go up against. If you made it this far, you might as well hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I really appreciate you tuning in. As always, follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. You can find all my work over at ESPNLacrosse.com. And again, my Wisconsin sports fans, Packers, Brewers, Bucks, Badgers, download the 105.5 ESPN Lacrosse app. Till next time, friends, take care.